Who do you consider the most inspirational person of all the time? Is this Martin Luther King or Nelson Mandela? There have been many great historical figures that have shaped the world down the ages, and it would be very difficult to pick those whose impact on the happenings in the world was greatest. Yet we gave it a try and compiled this video with 5 most inspirational people of all the time. Some of them are famous and some of them are rather unknown, but all of them have one thing in common: they changed the world. Number 5. Andrew Carnegie. Andrew Carnegie was born in 1835, was a Scottish-American industrialist and philanthropist. Carnegie led the expansion of the American steel industry in the late 19th century and became one of the richest Americans in history. He became a leading philanthropist in the United States and in the British Empire. So, let's find out why this historical entrepreneur made the list. Andrew Carnegie was born into a typical lower-class family in Scotland and lived in a weaver's cottage, a teeny house. The main room served not only as the living quarters but also the dining room, the bedroom for the whole family. His family were suffering from near starvation and poverty when William, his father, emigrated the family to Allegheny, Pennsylvania in the USA. His first job was that of a bobbin boy, paid $1.2 a week, where he had to change spools for 12 hours each day. Feeling this was not the career for him, he became a telegraph messenger for $2.5 per week. This job came with a couple of perks too, such as gaining free entry to the local theater. He soon progressed to $4 per week at the age of 18 years, and through hard work and rapid development, Andrew climbed swiftly through the ranks. Eventually, he became an investor, investing the money he had saved over the years into Adams Express Company, a messenger service. In 1880s, Carnegie Steel Company was the largest manufacturer of pig iron, steel rails, and coke in the world, with a capacity to produce approximately 2,000 tons of pig metal per day. By the time of his death in 1919, Carnegie had become famous for his investments, his oils, his writings, and his entrepreneurial streak. According to Carnegie Corporation, Carnegie's personal peak wealth was about $380 million, or around $309 billion by today's standard. He quoted, "To try to make the world in some way better than you find it is to have a noble motive in life." During the last 18 years of his life, he gave away $350 million to charities, foundations, and universities, almost 90% of his fortune. Andrew Carnegie is perhaps the most influential philanthropist in history. So, before you complain about struggles in achieving your dreams, think of Sir Andrew. How a poor boy with no education, no family support made it to the list one of the richest American and used his wealth for the development of the society. Number 4. Wright Brothers. While we take airplanes for granted today, imagine what life would be like if the Wright brothers hadn't dreamed of building the first passenger plane. The Wright brothers, Orville and Wilbur, born in the late 19th century, were 2 American aviation pioneers generally credited with inventing, building, and flying the world's first successful motor-operated airplane. Their lifelong love of aeronautics and flying was developed at early teenage when their father, Milton Wright, bought a toy helicopter for them. In 1889, the brothers started their own newspaper publishing business. The brothers also shared a passion for bicycles, a new craze that was sweeping through the country. In 1892, Wilbur and Orville opened a bike shop, fixing bicycles and selling their own designs. The Wright brothers began their aeronautical research in 1899. They observed that birds angled their wings for balance and control and tried to emulate this, developing a concept called wing wrapping. During the winter of 1902 to 1903, with the help of their mechanic Charlie Taylor, the Wrights designed and built a gasoline engine light enough and powerful enough to propel an airplane. The Wright brothers had the magic formula ready on December 17, 1903 by applying the power-driven controlled flight. which flew their plane for 59 seconds at 852 feet, an extraordinary achievement, and then the history was made. What makes them even special is that inventors of such sophisticated machines didn't attend college and were self-learned engineers and always risked their life when they took at a test flight. After around 2,000 attempts, they finally succeeded in 1903. Number 3. Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln was an American statesman and lawyer who served as the 16th President of the United States. Lincoln led the nation through its greatest moral, constitutional, and political crisis in the American Civil War. He presented the Union, abolished slavery, strengthened the federal government, and modernized the US economy. But life was not easy for Sir Lincoln. Here, have a look at the road at the White House. In 1831, he failed in business. In 1832, ran for the state legislature and was lost. And in 1860, was elected President of the United States. He became the president at most difficult time in US history. Before he even took office, 7 southern states had broken away from the Union and civil war broke out. The war years were difficult for Abraham Lincoln and his family after his young son Willie died of typhoid fever in 1862. Abraham Lincoln was assassinated on the night of the April 14, 1865 in Washington, D.C. Have a look. Few major accomplishments of Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln behind the progress nature of income tax in US. Lincoln also established the US national banking system. He led the Union to victory in the American Civil War. One of the famous quote of Lincoln goes by, "This nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and the government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth." Really, a lot to learn from Sir Lincoln life. Well, our first lesson is to always value optimism. Number 2. Michael Faraday. Michael Faraday was a physicist and chemist whose many experiments contributed greatly to the understanding of electromagnetism. Success didn't come easily to him. Like most of us, he didn't have a humble early life. His father was a blacksmith and his mother a housewife. Faraday was one of 4 children, all of whom were hard put to get enough to eat, since their father was often ill and incapable of working steadily. Faraday later recalled being given 1 loaf of bread that had to last him for a week. Faraday received only the rudiments of an education, learning to read, write, and cipher in a church Sunday school. At an early age, he began to earn money by delivering newspapers for a book dealer and bookbinder, and at the age of 14, he has apprenticed to the man. Unlike the other apprentices, Faraday took the opportunity to read some of the books brought in for rebinding. The article on electricity in the 3rd edition of Encyclopedia Britannica particularly fascinated him. Later in life, in 1812, Faraday began as Davy's laboratory assistant and learned chemistry. It has been said with some truth that Faraday was Davy's greatest discovery. In 1820, he produced the first known compounds of carbon and chlorine, C2Cl6 and C2Cl4. In 1825, as a result of research on eliminating gases, Faraday isolated and described benzene. In the 1820s, he also conducted investigations of steel alloys, helping to lay the foundations for scientific metallurgy and metallography. In the fall of 1831, Faraday made many discoveries in the field of electromagnetism and electrochemistry, which later resulted in the invention of electromotor. One thing I want to share with you, once the Prime Minister of England was given demonstration of electromagnetism and he asked Faraday that, "What good is it?" To which Faraday replied, "Soon you will be able to tax it." Today when we look at our electricity bill, we realize how Faraday foreseen the future. Number 1. Socrates. Socrates is also known as the founders of Western philosophy. He grew up during the golden age of Pericles. Athens, served with distinction as a soldier, but became to be known as the best Greek philosopher. Let's look at some of his contributions. He taught us to question everything. Socrates' most important contribution to Western philosophy was his technique for arguing a point, known as the Socratic technique, which he applied to many things such as truth and justice. He taught us that life is worthless without happiness. He taught us the art of learning. He quoted, "I know that I know nothing." Socrates believed that in order to come to a conclusion, a person needed to approach it with thought, sense, judgment, able knowledge, and prudence. He taught us to stand up for what we believe. Socrates lived and breathed his philosophies. However much they were scorned, ridiculed, laughed at, or feared, and he ultimately died by them. The state sweated its gadfly by trying him as a corrupter of youth and forcing him to commit suicide by poisoning himself. He could have renounced his beliefs and made a groveling defense during this trial, but he chose instead to stand tall to the last and accept his punishment, even turning down an opportunity to escape. There was undoubtedly a degree of recklessness and martyrdom to Socrates' death, but the lesson it teaches us about standing up for what we believe in to the very end remains powerful and enduring. 2.5 millennia of history might separate us from the age when Socrates roamed the streets of ancient Athens, formulating and articulating his philosophies to the people. But many of his words and ideas ring just as true in the 21st century as they did back then.
What was the verdict? When do I get out of here?
But Socrates, the verdict was death.
Death? You gotta be kidding me. For what?
For teaching the youth wisdom.
Thank you for watching our channel Exploring Trends. If you liked the video, then don't forget to like, subscribe, comment and share the video. We'll be back with more interesting topics. Thank you.